The old star burned red in the dying sky of Velthara Prime. Below, in the crystal cities that once hummed with peaceful life, silence ruled where millions had lived. The air still smelled of smoke and metal, mixed with something worse that the survivors tried not to think about. High Commander Zarvel stood on the observation deck of the last defense station. His 6 eyes watched the emptiness where the outer colonies used to be. 300 worlds. Gone. The Devourers had taken them all, turning living planets into dead metal spheres that fed their hunger. The Kethvar people had never known real war. For 1,000 years, they had lived in peace across 12 star systems. They grew food, made art, raised families, and studied the stars. Their weapons were designed to stun, not kill. Even their police carried tools meant to calm angry minds, not destroy them. Now those same people huddled in refugee camps, watching the sky for signs of metal ships that brought only death. The Devourers moved like a disease through space, taking everything and leaving nothing but empty rock behind. Dr. Veltar entered the command center, her blue fur streaked with gray from stress. As the head scientist of the Confederation, she had spent months studying the enemy. What she learned kept her awake at night. The Devourers were not alive in any way the Kethvar understood. They were machines ancient beyond measure, programmed to consume organic matter and convert it into fuel for their endless expansion. "Commander," she said, her voice tired. "The last probe ship returned from the outer rim. The news is not good." Zarvel turned all 6 eyes toward her. "Tell me." They found 17 more dead systems. The Devourers are not just taking our worlds. They are learning from each one. Getting faster. Getting smarter. Our computer models show they will reach the core worlds within 6 months. The command center fell silent. Everyone knew what that meant. The core worlds held the last 8 billion Kethvar in the galaxy. If they fell, the species would die. Young Officer Kretal, barely out of training, spoke up from his station. "What about the defense grid? The new shield generators?" Veltar shook her head. "I ran the numbers 3 times. The shields might slow them down by a few days, no more. They're harvesting beams cut through our strongest materials like they are not even there." Zarvel felt the weight of 8 billion lives on his shoulders. In the old days, the Confederation Council would meet for weeks to discuss important decisions. They would talk about ethics, about preserving life, about finding peaceful solutions. There was no time for such things now. "There is one option," Veltar said quietly. "We could send out a distress signal, not just to our neighbors, but to the whole galaxy. Someone out there might be strong enough to help us." The idea felt wrong to most of the Kethvar in the room. They had always solved their own problems. They had never needed to beg for help from strangers. But watching worlds die had changed their thinking. "What would we say?" Zarvel asked. Veltar had already thought about this. "We tell the truth. We are dying. Our children cry in the darkness as our worlds burn. If there are warriors among the stars, if there is mercy in the void, we ask them to save us." The word warriors felt strange coming from her mouth. The Kethvar had no warriors. They had gardeners, teachers, artists, and scientists. They had peacekeepers who helped settle arguments between neighbors. But warriors? That was something from the old stories, from the dark time before civilization. 3 days later, the signal went out. It traveled on every frequency, in every language the Confederation knew, powered by the last great transmitter on Velthara Prime. The message was simple and desperate. To any who can hear this across the dark between stars, we are the Kethvar Confederation. We are a peaceful people who have lived in harmony for 1,000 years. Now we face extinction. Ancient machines called the Devourers consume our worlds and turn all life into fuel for their endless hunger. 300 of our worlds are gone. 8 billion souls remain trapped on a few planets waiting to die. We have tried to fight. Our weapons are weak. Our shields are broken. Our people were never made for war. But maybe somewhere in the galaxy there are those who were. If you exist, if you have the strength we lack, please help us. Our children scream in the darkness. Time runs short. We offer what we have, our knowledge, our resources, our friendship. We ask only for our lives. Someone, anyone, please answer. Please save us. The signal traveled through space at the speed of light, carrying the desperate hope of a dying species. It passed dead worlds where other civilizations had fallen to the Devourers. It crossed empty space where no one lived to hear it. but it also reached places where things moved in the darkness between stars. On a blue world called Earth, in a system the Kethvar had never heard of, the signal was received by a species that had spent the last century learning how to kill each other with maximum efficiency. Humanity had just emerged from the final war, a conflict so terrible it had nearly destroyed their entire species. Cities had burned, continents had been poisoned, billions had died, but humans were still alive, and they had learned things during their dark century that no peaceful species could understand. They had learned how to turn anything into a weapon. They had learned how to make war so terrible that their enemies would rather die than continue fighting. They had learned that sometimes, to protect what you love, you must become something that others fear. Admiral Sarah Chen sat in the command center of the orbital defense platform above Earth. She had fought in the Martian Purge, the Asteroid Belt Campaign, and the final siege of Luna City. She knew the cost of war better than most. When the alien signal came through, she listened to it 3 times before speaking. "Sir?" asked her aide, Lieutenant Morrison. "What do you think?" Chen studied the star charts. The Kethvar systems were far away, but not impossible to reach. More importantly, they had resources that humanity needed: rare metals, energy sources, and habitable worlds. The Terran government had been looking for new opportunities since the war ended. This could be exactly what they needed. "Contact the War Council," she said. "Tell them we have an opportunity, a species that needs saving, and resources we need for rebuilding." Morrison looked confused. "Are we really going to help them, sir?" Chen smiled, but it was not a kind smile. "We are going to save them, Lieutenant. The question is whether they will like how we do it." Within a week, the human fleets were moving. Massive ships built for war, carrying weapons that could crack planets and soldiers who had learned to kill in 100 different ways. They moved through space toward the Kethvar systems, answering the call for salvation. The Kethvar would get their warriors. They just had no idea what warriors really meant. The human fleet arrived at the edge of Kethvar space like a storm rolling in from the dark. Admiral Chen watched the alien world grow larger on her screens as the Terran dreadnought, Unbreakable, moved into orbit. Behind her came 67 other ships, each one built for war, each one carrying enough firepower to level a continent. On the surface of Velthara Prime, High Commander Zarvel felt hope for the first time in months. The alien ships were smaller than he had expected. The largest was only half the size of a Kethvar colony transport. Surely beings who built such modest vessels would be reasonable. "Peaceful creatures like themselves, sir," reported Communications Officer Thelna. "The aliens are requesting permission to send a shuttle to the surface. They want to meet with our leadership." "Grant permission," Zarvel said, "and prepare the Great Hall. We should greet our saviors with proper ceremony." Dr. Veltar was not as hopeful. She had been studying the alien ships with long-range sensors, and what she saw worried her. The vessels were covered in armor plating. Strange weapon ports lined their hulls. These ships were not built for exploration or trade. They were built for something else entirely. The human shuttle landed in the central plaza of the capital city. It was an ugly, blocky thing that looked more like a metal box than a proper aircraft. But it got the job done, and that was what mattered to the humans inside. Admiral Chen stepped out first, followed by her staff. The aliens waiting for them looked like tall, slender cats that walked on 2 legs. Their fur was blue and gray, and they had large eyes that seemed kind and intelligent. They wore flowing robes and carried no weapons that Chen could see. Behind Chen came Commander Jake Morrison, her ground forces leader. Morrison had fought in the street battles of New Shanghai and the tunnel wars beneath Titan Station. He looked at the assembled aliens and immediately began calculating fields of fire, cover positions, and escape routes. It was automatic, something he did without thinking. "Welcome, friends from the stars," Zarvel said in carefully practiced English. The Kethvar had learned human languages from their broadcasts, something that had taken their best linguists working around the clock. "We are grateful beyond words that you heard our call." Chen nodded politely. "Admiral Sarah Chen, Terran Defense Force, this is Commander Morrison and my staff. We came as soon as we got your message." The first meeting took place in the Great Hall, a beautiful chamber with crystal walls that caught and reflected light in wonderful patterns. The Kethvar had prepared their finest foods and arranged flowers in traditional patterns of welcome. They wanted to show their new allies the best of their culture. Dr. Veltar presented the tactical situation using holographic displays that showed the current position of devourer forces. 3 massive fleets of the ancient machines were moving toward the core worlds, consuming everything in their path. "This is footage from our last deep space probe," she said, activating a recording. The display showed a devourer harvesting operation. Massive mechanical arms reached down from kilometer-long ships, tearing apart the surface of a living world. Billions of plants and animals were fed into processing centers that turned organic matter into fuel. The Kethvar leadership watched in horror, as they always did. They had seen this footage dozens of times, but it never got easier. The casual destruction of so much life made them feel sick. The humans watched with different eyes. Chen leaned forward, studying the mechanical harvesters. Morrison pointed at weak points in the Devourer ship design. Lieutenant Hayes, the fleet's weapons specialist, was already calculating how much firepower it would take to punch through their armor. "How long do we have?" Chen asked. 5 months, maybe 6 before they reach our core worlds, Veltar replied. "We have been trying to evacuate civilians, but there are 8 billion people and nowhere safe to take them." Morrison spoke up. "What about acceptable loss ratios? How many civilians are you willing to sacrifice to slow them down?" The question hit the room like a cold wind. Zarvel's 6 eyes blinked in confusion. "Sacrifice? We do not understand." "He means," Chen explained patiently, "how many of your people are you willing to lose to save the rest? You could use populated worlds as bait, draw the devourers into traps, buy time for evacuation." The silence that followed was uncomfortable. Dr. Veltar was the first to speak. We do not sacrifice our people. Every life is precious. We evacuate everyone we can." Lieutenant Hayes looked confused. "But that is impossible in a real war. You always have to choose who to save first. You always have to make hard choices." "This is not a war," Zarvel said firmly. "This is survival. We are not warriors. We are a peaceful people who grow food and make art and raise families. We called for help because we cannot fight like soldiers," Chen finished. "Yes, we understand. That is why you called us." Over the next few days, the cultural differences became more clear. The humans set up a base near the capital city, and the Kethvar were shocked by what they saw. Human soldiers carried weapons everywhere they went. They ate meat from animals, something the plant-eating Kethvar found disturbing. Their entertainment systems showed humans fighting each other for sport. Dr. Veltar began keeping detailed notes on their new allies. The humans seemed to enjoy preparing for battle. They talked about killing the enemy with the same tone the Kethvar used to discuss growing gardens. Young human soldiers laughed while cleaning weapons that could cut through tank armor. Most disturbing of all was their children's entertainment. Veltar watched human children play games on small computers. The games involved conquering planets, building armies, and destroying enemies. Kethvar children played games about growing flowers and helping animals. The difference worried her. Commander Morrison gave a presentation on human military tactics. He showed videos of past battles, explaining how human forces had won against larger enemies. The Kethvar leadership watched in growing horror as humans used psychological warfare, biological weapons, and strategies that sacrifice small groups to save larger ones. "This is how we will fight the Devourers," Morrison explained. "We will be faster, smarter, and more ruthless than they are. We will use every advantage, break every rule, and do whatever it takes to win." Young Officer Kretal raised a shaking hand. "What about the rules of war? What about protecting civilians? What about mercy?" Morrison looked at him with something that might have been pity. "Kid, the enemy you are fighting does not know about mercy. They turn living beings into fuel. The only rule that matters is winning." That night, Dr. Veltar could not sleep. She sat in her laboratory, writing in her personal journal. "Day 5 of contact with humans. I begin to understand why they answered our call so quickly. They are not heroes coming to save us out of kindness. They are predators who smell opportunity. But maybe that is what we need. Maybe to fight monsters, you need other monsters. I pray to the old spirits that we are doing the right thing. I pray that when this is over, we will still be who we were before." In the human base, Admiral Chen was having her own thoughts. She stood looking at the alien city with its crystal towers and peaceful gardens. It reminded her of Earth before the final war, when humans had also believed that civilization meant being gentle. They have no idea what we are. she said to Morrison, who had joined her on the observation deck. Should we tell them? Morrison asked. Chen shook her head. They will figure it out soon enough. For now, let them hope we are the heroes they wanted. The truth can wait until after we have won. The first Devourer scout ships were detected 2 days later, moving toward the outer system. The real war was about to begin, and the Kethvar were about to learn what their human saviors were really capable of. The first battle happened near the gas giant Thylos, where a Devourer scout fleet had stopped to refuel from the planet's hydrogen clouds. Admiral Chen deployed her forces in what the Kethvar thought would be a rescue mission. They were wrong. Dr. Veltar watched from the command center as human ships surrounded the enemy. She expected the humans to demand surrender, or at least warn the Devourers to leave. Instead, the human fleet opened fire without any communication at all. The weapons the humans used were unlike anything the Kethvar had seen. Plasma beams that could melt through metal like butter. Kinetic rounds that hit with the force of falling mountains. But most disturbing were the biological weapons, engineered viruses that infected Devourer computer systems and made them attack each other. By the ancient spirits, whispered Zarvel as he watched Devourer ships tear themselves apart. How do they make machines go insane? Commander Morrison answered from his position at the tactical display. Psychological warfare adapted for artificial intelligence. We studied captured Devourer code samples and created viruses that trigger feedback loops in their decision-making processes. Drives them crazy just like it would a living mind. The battle was over in 3 hours. Every Devourer ship was destroyed or disabled. The human fleet had taken only minor damage. But what happened next shocked the Kethvar even more than the fighting. Instead of simply destroying the wreckage, human salvage teams moved in to study every piece of Devourer technology they could find. They were not just fighting the enemy, they were learning from them. We need to understand how they think, Admiral Chen explained when Veltar questioned this. Know your enemy better than they know themselves. It is an old human saying. The second battle took place in the Karash system, where the Devourers had built a massive processing center to convert captured Kethvar into fuel. Over 2 million aliens were trapped in harvesting chambers waiting to die. Zarvel expected the humans to plan a careful rescue operation. They had the firepower to destroy the facility. Surely they could save the prisoners too. He was about to learn how humans really fought. Commander Morrison's ground forces infiltrated the processing center while it was still operating. They moved through the facility like ghosts, placing charges in key locations, but they did not free the prisoners. They left them exactly where they were. What are they doing? Veltar asked, watching the tactical display in growing horror. Why are they not saving our people? Morrison answered without looking away from his screens. We are using them as bait. The Devourers think they still have time to complete the harvesting process. They will bring their entire fleet in close to protect the facility. Then we spring the trap. The plan worked perfectly. Devourer ships moved into defensive positions around the processing center, trying to shield their valuable harvest from human attack. When the entire enemy fleet was in position, Morrison triggered his charges. The explosion was visible from orbit. The processing center, the Devourer fleet, and all 2 million Kethvar prisoners disappeared in a ball of nuclear fire that turned the facility into a small sun. Silence filled the command center. Dr. Veltar stared at the empty space where millions of her people had been alive just moments before. Her hands shook as she tried to process what had happened. You killed them, she whispered. You killed our people. Morrison turned to face her, and his expression was not cruel or angry. It was patient, like a teacher explaining something to a slow student. Those people were already dead, Doctor. The Devourers had them. Our choice was to let them die for nothing, or make their death save everyone else. We destroyed a third of the enemy's mobile fleet in that operation, Admiral Chen added. Those 2 million sacrificed themselves to save 8 billion. It was a good trade. Young Officer Kretal could not contain himself. A good trade. They were people. They had families. They had children. Chen looked at him with something that might have been sympathy. Yes, they did. And now their children might live to grow up, because we stopped the Devourers from taking any more worlds. That is how war works, officer. You make the hard choices so others do not have to. The third major engagement took place in deep space, where the humans had detected a massive Devourer construction project. The enemy was building something the size of a small moon, fed by the processed remains of a dozen consumed worlds. This time the humans did not use conventional weapons. They fired a single projectile at the construction site, a chunk of metal moving at 90% of light speed. When it hit, the impact released more energy than a star-going supernova. The explosion was so powerful it created a new nebula. The Devourer project, along with every ship within 10 light hours, simply ceased to exist. The shock wave from the impact would make that entire region of space uninhabitable for the next 1,000 years. "You cracked space itself," Veltar said, staring at the readings. "How do you build weapons like this?" Lieutenant Hayes, the weapons specialist, answered proudly. "We call it the relativistic kill vehicle. Take any chunk of matter, accelerate it to near light speed, and it becomes the most powerful weapon in the universe. We have been building them since the Mars War. But the damage to local space..." Zarvel protested. "That area will be poisoned for centuries. Nothing will ever live there again." Admiral Chen shrugged. "Better dead space than Devourer space. Besides, in a few million years it will heal. The universe is big. We can afford to break a few pieces of it." As the human campaign continued, the Kethvar began to see a pattern. Every human victory came with a cost that seemed unthinkable to their peaceful minds. The humans won by being willing to do things their enemies could not imagine. They turned entire star systems into weapons. They sacrificed millions to save billions. They broke the basic laws of civilization that the Kethvar had lived by for 1,000 years. And somehow, impossibly, it was working. Dr. Veltar updated her private journal each night. Day 47 of the human campaign. The Devourer advance has stopped for the first time in 2 years. Our saviors are winning. But I begin to understand that victory and salvation are not the same thing. The humans fight like the old stories of demons, beings who grant your wishes but twist them into nightmares. We asked for warriors to save us from monsters. We got warriors who are themselves monsters. The question now is, which kind of monster will we choose to live with? In the Human Command Center, Admiral Chen studied reports from across the battlefront. The Devourers were retreating on all fronts. Their fleets were scattered. Their construction projects destroyed, their advance stopped. By any military measure, the campaign was a stunning success. "How long until we finish them?" Morrison asked. Chen considered the question. 6 months to destroy their remaining fleets, another year to hunt down the scattered units. After that, the Kethvar will be safe. "And then?" Morrison asked. Chen smiled, the same cold smile she had worn when the alien distress signal first arrived. "Then we discuss payment for our services. The Kethvar called for salvation. We are going to give it to them, whether they like it or not." The war against the Devourers was almost over, but the Kethvar were about to discover that winning could be more dangerous than losing. The Devourer threat was ending, but something else was beginning. Dr. Veltar noticed it first when she tried to visit the outer colonies to assess damage from the war. Human soldiers politely but firmly turned her away from the checkpoint. "I am sorry, Doctor," said Sergeant Williams, a young human with kind eyes and a plasma rifle. "These areas are under military protection now. Civilians are not allowed without proper authorization." "Civilian?" Veltar repeated. "This is my home system. I am the head scientist of the Confederation government." Williams checked his datapad. "You will need Form 23C signed by Admiral Chen and countersigned by Commander Morrison. Security regulations, ma'am, for your own protection. Protection zones. That was what the humans called them. Safe areas around major Kethvar worlds where human forces maintained order and security. The zones had appeared gradually as the war progressed, supposedly to protect against Devourer infiltration attempts. Now the Devourers were gone, but the protection zones remained. And they were growing larger. High Commander Zarvel called an emergency meeting of the Confederation Council, the great chamber that had once hosted debates about art festivals and agricultural policy, now buzzed with worried voices discussing military occupation and restricted movement. "We must address this carefully," Zarvel said to the assembled leaders. "The humans saved us. We cannot seem ungrateful, but their protection is becoming uncomfortable." Council member Thelran spoke up from his seat. "Yesterday, human soldiers took my grandson for military training. They said all young Kethavar must learn to defend themselves in case the Devourers return. But the Devourers are gone, are they not? Dr. Veltar had been investigating this herself. I have been monitoring communications. Human forces are recruiting Kethavar youth across all the core worlds. They call it defensive training, but they are teaching our children to use weapons, to follow military orders, to think like soldiers. The thought chilled the room. Kethavar children were raised to be gentle, creative, and peaceful. The idea of turning them into warriors felt like destroying everything their culture stood for. Young Officer Kretal, now promoted but still idealistic, raised his hand. What about the captured Devourer technology? I heard the humans are studying it in secret facilities. Should they not share their findings with us? This was what worried Veltar most. She had been trying to access the research data for weeks, but human scientists politely redirected her requests through an endless chain of bureaucracy. They were studying Devourer technology not to understand it, but to use it. That night, Veltar decided to confront Admiral Chen directly. She found the human commander in the old observatory, looking up at the stars through the crystal dome. Chen seemed smaller when she was alone, more human somehow. Beautiful night, Chen said without turning around. Your world has 3 moons. On Earth, we only have 1. I miss it sometimes. Admiral, Veltar began carefully, I need to ask you about the protection zones, and the training programs, and the research restrictions. Chen turned around and her expression was tired. You want to know what we are really doing here? Yes. Chen walked to the star charts that covered one wall of the observatory. Do you know what humans were like before our final war, Doctor? We were a lot like you. We believed in peace and cooperation, in solving problems with words instead of weapons. What changed? Veltar asked. Reality, Chen replied. We learned that the universe is full of things that want to kill you. The Martian separatists who used bioweapons on civilian targets, the AI rebellion that turned our own computers against us, the resource wars that nearly destroyed Earth itself. We learned that being peaceful only works if everyone agrees to be peaceful. But someone always breaks the rules. Someone always chooses violence. And when that happens, the gentle people die first. Veltar felt a chill run through her fur. So you decided to become the ones who break the rules first. Chen nodded slowly. We became the monster so that monsters would fear us. It worked. Humanity survived. Now we are the strongest species in known space, and nobody tries to destroy us anymore. And us? Veltar asked quietly. What happens to the Kethavar? Chen looked back at the stars. You called for salvation. We came, we destroyed your enemies. Now you are safe, but safety has a price. The protection zones are not temporary, are they? Veltar realized. The galaxy is a dangerous place, Doctor. You proved that when you called for help. The Devourers were just one threat. There will be others. Pirates, raiders, hostile AI, rogue nations. Your people need protection. Protection that we never asked for. Chen's smile was not unkind, but it was not warm either. You asked for warriors to save you. We came, we won. Now we stay to make sure you never need to call for help again. And if we want you to leave? Veltar asked, though she already knew the answer. Then we explain why that is not possible, Chen replied. Gently, we hope. Your people are not ready to protect themselves. The universe has not become safer just because the Devourers are gone. The final battle against the Devourers took place in the dead system of Korthak, where the last enemy fleet had gathered around an ancient processing station. Admiral Chen personally led the assault, using weapons so powerful they turned the enemy ships into plasma before they could respond. When it was over, the Devourer threat was finished forever. No more worlds would burn. No more people would be harvested for fuel. The ancient machines that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia were finally extinct. The Kethavar celebrated across all their remaining worlds. Festivals of gratitude filled the cities. Children who had grown up afraid of the sky finally played outside without fear. The humans had kept their promise. The Kethavar were saved, but the human ships did not leave. The protection zones did not shrink. The military training programs expanded. And in secret facilities across Kethavar space, human scientists worked with captured Devourer technology, learning how to build machines that could consume entire worlds. Dr. Veltar wrote her final official report as head scientist of the Confederation. The Devourer War is over. Humanity has fulfilled their promise to save us. The question now is, saved from what and for what purpose? We are alive. Our children will grow up. Our culture will continue, though perhaps in forms we do not recognize. We called into the darkness for salvation and something answered. We just did not ask what price salvation would carry. The humans are not evil. I believe that. They genuinely saved us from extinction, but they saved us the way a farmer saves livestock. Not for our sake, but for theirs. We are now part of something larger, something we do not fully understand. History will judge whether we made the right choice. But it was the only choice we had. The alternative was death. On Earth, in the halls of the Terran Defense Council, Admiral Chen received a promotion to High Commander of Galactic Operations. Her success in the Kethvar campaign had impressed the leadership. More alien species were sending distress signals, asking for help against various threats. Each call for help was an opportunity. Each rescue operation was a chance to expand human influence. Each saved species became a new client state in the growing Terran Protection Authority. The humans had learned something important during their own dark century. The universe was full of threats, but it was also full of opportunities. And sometimes the best way to protect yourself was to make sure everyone else needed your protection. The Kethvar had asked for heroes. Instead, they had gotten something much more practical: guardians who would never leave. 10 years had passed since the last Devourer ship was destroyed. Dr. Veltar, now old and gray, sat in her small apartment in the human-administered housing complex on Velthara Prime. Outside her window, she could see the city that had once been the jewel of Kethvar civilization. The crystal towers still stood, but now they were topped with human communication arrays and defensive installations. Kethvar civilians moved through the streets, but human soldiers stood at every corner. The old markets sold traditional foods, but the prices were set by the Terran Economic Authority. The Kethvar Confederation still existed, technically. High Commander Zarvel still held his title, though he now reported to Human Regional Administrator Collins. The council still met, though their decisions required approval from the Terran Protection Authority before they could be implemented. It was not slavery, the humans insisted. It was protection, and in many ways they were right. No pirates raided Kethvar shipping lanes, no hostile species threatened their borders, no wars disrupted their peaceful lives. Crime had dropped to almost zero. Disease and hunger were things of the past. The humans had kept their promise. The Kethvar were safe. Veltar's granddaughter visited her that morning. Young Kira wore the gray uniform of the Kethvar Defense Corps, a human-trained militia that served alongside Terran forces. She carried a sidearm and moved with the confident stride of someone trained for combat. "Grandmother," Kira said, settling into the chair across from her. "I got accepted for advanced training on the human colony ship. I will learn their latest weapons systems." Veltar looked at her granddaughter and saw a stranger. This young Kethvar thought like a soldier, planned like a tactician, and spoke casually about weapons designed to kill. She was everything the old Kethvar culture had never produced, and everything the humans said they needed to be. "Do you remember the old stories?" Veltar asked. "About how our people used to live? About the time before the humans came?" Kira shifted uncomfortably. "Grandmother, those were different times. The galaxy was more dangerous then. The Devourers proved that peaceful species cannot survive on their own. The humans taught you to think that way," Veltar said gently. "The humans taught me to survive," Kira replied. "They saved us from extinction. Everything we have now we owe to them." After Kira left, Veltar returned to her writing. She had been working on a secret project for years, a complete record of Kethvar history before the humans arrived. Not the official version that human educators taught in schools, but the real story of who her people had been. She wrote about the great gardens of Thessara, where Kethvar artists had grown sculptures from living trees. She wrote about the poetry competitions that had lasted for weeks, where young Kethvar would compose verses about the beauty of peaceful existence. She wrote about the schools where children learned to resolve conflicts with words, not weapons. All of that was gone now, not destroyed but changed into something unrecognizable. The gardens still existed, but they were maintained by human agricultural specialists for maximum efficiency. Poetry was still written, but it celebrated human heroes and military victories. Children still learned conflict resolution, but it involved tactical planning and strategic thinking. Veltar received a visitor that afternoon. Admiral Chen, now High Commander of Galactic Operations, had come to Velthera Prime on an inspection tour. She looked older but still carried herself with the same confident authority that had both saved and doomed the Kethvar. "Dr. Veltar," Chen said, accepting a cup of traditional Kethvar tea. "You look well. Retirement suits you." "Forced retirement," Veltar corrected gently. "When you decided our research programs were no longer necessary." Chen nodded without shame. "You were studying theoretical problems. We needed practical solutions. Human scientists are more efficient at military research." "Is that why you came?" Veltar asked. "To explain efficiency?" Chen set down her tea and looked directly at the old scientist. "I came because I heard you have been writing a history book. Some of my people are concerned about what you might be saying." Veltar felt a familiar chill. "Are you here to stop me?" "That depends on what you are writing," Chen replied. "If it is an accurate account of how humanity saved the Kethvar from extinction, then no. If it is propaganda designed to make people ungrateful for their protection, then yes." Veltar considered her words carefully. "I am writing the truth. Nothing more, nothing less. The truth is complicated," Chen said. "The truth is that your people were dying and we saved them. The truth is that the galaxy is dangerous and we keep you safe. The truth is that you are alive because of us." "All of that is true," Veltar agreed. "But it is not the whole truth." Chen leaned back in her chair. "What else is there?" "The truth is that we called for heroes and you came," Veltar said quietly. "The truth is that you saved us, but you also conquered us. The truth is that survival came at the cost of everything we used to be." "And?" Chen asked. "And maybe that was the right choice," Veltar admitted. "Maybe it was the only choice. But future generations should know what was lost as well as what was saved." Chen studied the old alien for a long moment. "You know that most young Kethvar would not understand your book. They think the old ways were naive and dangerous. They are proud to serve alongside human forces." "I know," Veltar said. "But someday someone might want to know who we were before we became who we are now." Chen stood to leave. "Keep writing your book, Doctor. But remember, history is written by the survivors, and you survived because of us." After Chen left, Veltar returned to her writing. The final entry in her secret history would be the hardest to write, because it would be the most honest. "We asked the darkness for salvation, and something answered. The humans came and they saved us from extinction, but they also changed us into something we never wanted to be. Our children are soldiers now. Our culture serves their purposes. Our future belongs to them. They are not evil. I still believe that. They genuinely believe they are protecting us, and in many ways they are right. The galaxy is dangerous. We were too weak to survive on our own. We needed their strength. But we also needed to remain ourselves. And that they could not give us. To be protected by humans, we had to become more like humans. To survive in their universe, we had to accept their values. To live under their protection, we had to become their subjects. The Kethvar who called for help are extinct now, as surely as if the devourers had consumed us all. What remains is something new, a species that looks like us but thinks like them. Maybe that is evolution. Maybe that is survival. Maybe that is the price of living in a universe where the strong make the rules. Somewhere in distant space, another species is probably broadcasting a distress signal right now. They are asking for heroes to save them from whatever threatens their world. And somewhere, human ships are already calculating profit margins and deployment costs. They will answer that call, just as they answered ours. They will save that species just as they saved us. And 10 years later, that species will discover what we learned, that salvation and freedom are not the same thing. On Earth, in the orbital command center that coordinated human protection operations across 67 star systems, High Commander Chen reviewed the latest reports. 3 more species had sent distress signals in the past month. A machine intelligence was threatening the Zephyrian Republic. Space pirates were raiding Talarian trade routes. An unknown plague was devastating the Mordak colonies. Each crisis was an opportunity. Each rescue operation expanded the Terran Protection Authority. Each saved species became another client state that contributed resources, manpower, and loyalty to the growing human empire. Chen approved all 3 rescue missions with a simple notation in the files. Salvation package authorized. Standard terms apply. The standard terms were simple. Humanity would destroy the threat, secure the region, and provide ongoing protection. In exchange, the saved species would contribute to the common defense and accept human leadership in military and security matters. It was a fair deal. Everyone survived. Everyone prospered. Everyone was safe. The only cost was freedom, and most species decided that was a price worth paying. After all, what good was freedom if you were dead? Humanity had learned the most important lesson from their own dark century. The universe was not a place for the peaceful, but it could be made safe for them, as long as they accepted that safety came with conditions. The humans had become the answer to every species' prayers. They had also become the reason why no one prayed for anything else. In the end, the Kethvar had gotten exactly what they asked for: salvation from extinction. They just had not understood that salvation could be its own kind of death.